listening to the Marketing and Yoga Pants podcast, a podcast in sisterhood for female entrepreneurs that serves up savvy, actionable marketing advice and interviews with creative business owners who are in the trenches, building their businesses as we speak. The Marketing and Yoga Pants community is for you, the girl on her couch, in her yoga pants, top knot tight, hunched over her MacBook, trying her hardest to get the word out about her business. So in the name of supporting each other while supporting ourselves, bringing community, sound marketing advice, coffee, chocolate, and wine together for you, yoga pants wearing business owner, in a world where followers mean nothing, but paying customers mean the world, join us on this week's podcast episode and in our private Facebook group where you'll meet your soul sisters and build your business in yoga pants. Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing and Yoga Pants podcast. I'm Brit and I'm here today with Devon Smiley, negotiation consultant and speaker. Thank you so much for joining me today, Devon.
So great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. So Devon and I connected, well, pretty much like a lot of people connect these days on Instagram, right? A long time ago, a while ago, it was like I was meeting everybody in Facebook groups. And now, I don't know, my activity on social has definitely moved over to Instagram. And I think probably a lot of you are, yeah, me too. So we got to connect and I was instantly fascinated with how Devon lives her life nowadays, her company, what she does, what she works with people on. It's just incredibly fascinating all the way around. So I'm pumped to get to chat with her today, get some insight into her business, her industry, her marketing strategy, and what makes it all tick. So Devon, are you ready to jump in?
Ooh, I'm ready.
All right, let's do this. Okay, so Devon, first of all, tell us, how do you earn your living?
I earn my living as a negotiation consultant and speaker. Which, when I say that, most people kind of make a face because they're like, what on earth does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
It basically means I teach people the skills they need to ask for what they want, need, and deserve.
Ooh, ask, need, and deserve. I don't know about you, but I have had a tough time asking for things, right? I find that there are a lot of mindset shifts that need to happen in order to confidently ask for something. Can you take us into how you work with people to get them to that point? I'm going to just dive right into that because it's just so fascinating.
Yeah.
How do you work with people? Yeah, how do you work with people to get them to ask for what they desire and need?
Yeah, there's two main ways I work with people. One is through one-on-one coaching and mentorship. And the other is by speaking, so keynotes and masterclasses. And specifically when I work one-on-one with clients, we are, it's not therapy, but we talk about a lot of feelings, especially about the mindset stuff. And I find usually my clients are coming to me because they've just had something kind of crappy happen. Someone hasn't paid them or hasn't paid them enough, or they've just, chickened out of asking for something and they're kicking themselves. And our starting point is then figuring out, okay, what went wrong the first time? Why do you have this aversion to actually asking for something? Did someone once yell at you and say no? Did you get kicked out of a meeting once? What happened? And then, okay, this is how it's going to feel better. So a big thing for me is teaching people how to negotiate in a way that feels natural and feels good to them, because no one wants to, feel like crap when they're trying to make their ask.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so of course there are so many things to ask about that, but I would love to know first, tell us the story of how you came to do this with your life. I don't think you're like 4 years old thinking, I'm going to be a negotiation consultant, right? So how did you get here?
Oh, exactly. I ended up in negotiation quite by accident. Even when I left university, I had no clue this is where I would end up. And I got involved in negotiation because I was first in procurement. So supply management, working with vendors, expediting parts. And I realized that I was having to struggle with these vendors because there were really bad contracts. Mm-hmm. Someone hadn't done a good job negotiating a contract. And I thought, you know what, I'll try my hand at that. So I switched over into contract negotiation. I thought it would be boring. turns out it is actually quite exciting. There's a lot of different personalities. There's a lot of things with communication you get to work with. The strategy side of it was wonderful. And when I saw how being able to negotiate well meant you left a room with stronger relationships, and that for years to come, you had strong relationships, I thought, okay, there's something here. This is my thing. I want to be able to help other people have this positive, warm, fuzzy feeling when it comes to negotiation. And that was probably, I got started in negotiation. It's been 15 years now that I've been doing it in some capacity or another. And it's 3.5 years that I've been doing it solo as a consultant.
Okay, so tell us about that transition. Because I would assume you were in some sort of nice corporate job doing this, and then 3 years ago you decided that you're going to do it on your own. So tell us that story.
Well, I think a big part of the transition was that within a set corporate job, because I wasn't a huge corporate, it's one of North America's largest corporates actually, and I'd sort of done it all. I'm like, well, what's left to negotiate here? Where's the challenge? And I always love a challenge. So the idea of becoming an entrepreneur, the bell went off for me there. And then I got specifically into working with individuals, doing the one-on-one work, because as part of my job, I'd started coaching and mentoring junior negotiators. And they would come to me and book their hour in my, already packed schedule. And we'd sit in a little tiny conference room together, and they would be so nervous. And just like, oh, they did not want to do this at all. But by the end of our hour together, they were like, oh, sitting up straighter, the shoulders went back. They were actually a little excited to go negotiate. I like this feeling. So I want to be able to do this with as many people as possible. And that made the decision to take the leap out of corporate. It made it very easy.
Interesting. So you started to see that transformation in people. So how did you do it? How did you leap? Did you put your notice in? You were gone 2 weeks later. What was that like?
Well, I'd started about 6 to 9 months before I ended up quitting. I started vlogging. And a lot of that was to see if I could find my own voice in negotiation, because there's a lot of content out there and a lot of it is very academic. And I knew that coming from the corporate world, I had all the jargon. I mean, I sounded like a textbook sometimes. So I had to be able to find a way to translate my knowledge into something that was accessible for people. So that was my starting point. Blogging about it, finding my voice, putting out my feelers for if people would actually be interested in it. At that point, I gave the 2 weeks notice. Not many people were surprised that I was leaving, because I think they'd all kind of picked up on the fact that I had this fun project on the side. And from there, it was diving straight on in and, waking up the next Monday morning and knowing that I had to work my little buns off.
So did you have any clients when you left?
I had not a single client.
Yes, girl. I didn't either. It's not very often that I talk to someone that didn't have a client. And tell me if you feel like this too. Like when I think back on that, I'm thinking, what in the world were you thinking? Like that does not make any kind of sense. And yet I did all of it with literally no fear, to the point where there were several people in my life being like, Brittany, aren't you like a little scared? Like, are you sure you've thought about this?
Exactly.
And in that moment, I said, of course I've thought about this. Now, a couple years later, I'm like, did I really think about it? But I mean, of course, I feel like it was definitely the right move. But do you feel like that too?
I feel like that too. And I think one of the things it was is, as a decision maker, I tend to be more of the spreadsheet pro and con list variety. Like I will overthink things way too much. It's one of my good sides and bad sides. But that is one of the first decisions I made where it was just an emotional. It was like, this feels right. I want to do this. I have to make this happen. And none of the numbers on the spreadsheet add up right now, but they will eventually.
Yes.
I need to give myself the time to make that happen. Because I was finding too, and I think a big part of why it became emotional is that a few good opportunities had come my way and I had to say no to them because I had this, I'll call it the 9 to 5, but it was the 9 to 9 of being in the cubicle. I thought, well, I can't be on any podcasts. I can't go do that event someone invited me to. I can't actually see if there's full potential in this consulting thing because of the job. So.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. So
Still kind of wish I'd had a few clients when I quit.
well, yeah, but you didn't, and here you are a couple years later. So it all worked out. So how did you get your first few clients? What did that look like?
Well, my very first client, I had one client before I quit. And he had found me through a random Google search. I think when we talked on the phone, he's like, I literally typed in negotiation coach and your website popped up.
Wow.
I was like, oh, okay, great, fine. So I'd worked with him, but it wasn't an ongoing thing. It was the one-off, but I knew I'd enjoyed it. But once I went full-time, it was all about the Facebook groups, about the Facebook groups. I think for the next year, pretty much every single client I had was from networking and showing up and being of service and all those great ways you can use Facebook to find clients.
Yeah, that's so smart. And then you said that you've been in business for about 3 years. How have you seen and how have you deliberately shifted that strategy to continue to get clients? What's working now?
Well, I think a very deliberate switch for me is I found that in the Facebook communities, it was a lot of very, very new entrepreneurs. And I figured out, it's always the search for who's your ideal client. I think that's always sort of shifting. But my ideal client became someone who's already been in business for a few years. They've had those, oh no, crap moments, and they've already had some successes that they can build on. So the types of people I was meeting, they were lovely, wonderful people, but it wasn't a good fit for my business. And quite by accident, I saw that Instagram was starting to work really well. And I am as shocked as anyone that negotiation can work on Instagram because it's not a very pretty thing that I do. I can't just put photos of myself deep in thought working on a strategy.
Right. That's cool. And we didn't really mean to do this, but as I was introducing you, I just happened to say, we did not mean to do that, guys. But that just happened. It's been what I've seen as well. It's an interesting little transition, whether I'm not sure what it is. I don't know if the stage of my business or just the state of affairs for the world. I don't know. While there's still so much value in Facebook groups and there's so much value in Instagram, it's just a matter of kind of finding that in different places and experimenting, I think, a lot of times. So that's really interesting. Now, tell us the story of how your big, huge, life-altering physical move plays into this whole thing, because you haven't even mentioned it yet, and I'm shocked because I think this is super cool. I mean, you've been in business for 3 years and your life has completely changed. I think within the last year, right? It's been within 12 months.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the big news, like drum roll, please.
Yeah,
is that about 5 months ago, I moved to Paris.
I'm
Canadian. I was in Montreal before. And it was almost a year ago that I got the idea, like, oh, I could actually move to Paris. And I started doing the research for how to make that happen. And then 5 months ago, I got on a plane with 2 suitcases and a backpack, having pretty much sold everything I own back home. And voila, now I'm in France. And again, the question people ask is, well, why on earth did you move to Paris? And the joke answer is, well, I can't get enough pastry. So I had to come to the capital of good pastry. I mean,
of course.
Why else would I move to Paris? But more truthfully, for the business angle, it was actually quite strategic on my part because I want to work more and more with startups. And France right now is putting a whole lot of investment and a lot of marketing and energy into building startup communities. That's where I want to be. It's like the next Silicon Valley. This is what they're building over here, and I want to be a part of that. So I made a projet for the French government saying why their people need negotiation, how I can help them build their businesses. And they let me in. So it was a good sign for my business.
Wow. See, I didn't know that part. I didn't know the part of this is a strategic business move on top of, heck, I mean, I'm going to go live in Paris. That's a pretty cool adventure, but that's so intriguing. So intriguing. Okay. So what's it been like? What have the last 5 months been like?
I have filled out more paperwork than I ever thought I would have to fill out in my life. So yeah, it's a bit of a stereotype of France, but it is very true. Lots of paperwork. But I have also found that all the reports that I saw back in Canada about what the environment and the atmosphere was like here around new businesses, it's actually been true. I got a little worried the first week because I think without the jet lag and just the exhaustion of having moved, I was like, oh no, what if that was all a lie? What if I've done this for nothing? But no, it's true. There are events every single day of the week that I could be going to. Like there will be Wednesday nights when I have 4 things to choose from, when I can go see different people speak and I can go to a masterclass. And it's just, the city is buzzing with that type of energy. So the last 5 months have been me getting myself out there, going to all of those events, meeting as many people as I possibly can.
Now, is that your natural space to be out there and networking?
No.
I didn't think so. Yeah. So take me into that. What's that been like? Because to me, you come off as a very, very warm, on the quiet end, introverted, mystic, just like I really want to know her. And I also don't really see you going out and being around a bunch of people. And maybe that's just me being crazy, but yeah, how's that been?
It's been interesting. My preferred, natural state, Devon, is to be alone, working by myself with no people around me.
Right.
That's sort of my happy space.
Me too.
And in the last 3 years, I got like, oh, I love it. If I could just, again, in the yoga pants, just me and my computer making some magic. That is I adore that. Unfortunately, it isn't always a fabulous way to actually build a profitable business. So one of the lessons I've learned in the last few years is that I saw better results when I would actually, put on my real pants, put on a little bit of makeup, deal with the fear, and just get out there and meet people. So when I moved here, and I literally knew one person kind of when I moved to Paris. So I had as I say this, it sounds a little crazy, but I knew no one. So I knew I have to meet people just to even have human interaction, make it happen. I'm still my nice little quiet Devon. I'd still prefer that if the business magically came to me, but it's not going to do that. I've tapped into that, maybe the 20% of myself that is quite extroverted, and I crank that up more often than before.
It's really interesting. So it's a blend. I can see through your whole story. You could have continued to build the way that you were building behind your computer screen and in Canada, and yet you chose to not only sell all your things and pull up all the roots and go to Paris. It's also, it's getting yourself out of your comfort zone and being in front of people. Tell me, what are some ways you've found are helpful to you to cope with all of that upheaval, right? Like, how do you balance that? How do you blend it? What's been your story for that?
I think what was important to me, and it's not necessarily going to be the healthiest of techniques. So, this is the little warning, the French word for me is avertissement, like the little warning label. Is for me, it's really important to stay super busy and to keep myself a little tired. Because I find when I relax, like if I go into full on, like pamper myself relaxation mode, I then have all the thoughts and the fears and the worries come in. As long as I'm keeping my momentum, it's kind of like, what is it, the shark that has to keep swimming? As long as I am swimming, I am more optimistic, I am positive, I am more outgoing. When I power down, that's the difficulty is powering back up afterwards. So again, not the healthiest technique because everyone does need their rest, but I think I've sort of managed to achieve that sweet spot of like beneficial exhaustion in how I lead my days.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. Like, of course, there's the side that thinks, ooh, like, is that recipe for burnout? Well, maybe. And it's a phase. I can hear it in your voice. Like, it's not like you expect to do this forever. You've only been there for 5 months. I mean, 5 months really is not that long when you think about it.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of building a business, it's like absolutely nothing. It's 2 grains of sand in what it takes to build a full business. Right. So I almost feel like I'm starting over being here because, again, not having the network. And thankfully, I work online with people. So I still have clients in North America. I'm still doing my calls with people out on the west coast of the States, which is a late hour for me, but that's fine. That's what coffee's for. And I love that. But I think it's almost been like I am able to take the best of the business I've built so far and expand it into this new market and the potential of that. Like I'm getting so excited just talking about it. I love the potential of that. And that's what keeps me going.
It definitely gets me excited too. It's so fascinating. I've had conversations sort of similar to this on the podcast before about with entrepreneurs who have done something that seems from the outside pretty radical. You know, they take their 3 kids and go on an 8-month journey around the US, and they, you know, like you, they move from Canada to Paris, and someone else who spends some of her time in the US and some of her time in Italy managing 2 businesses, you know, and every time that these radical stories come up, someone always reaches out to me and says, "Thank you for sharing this. I thought it was impossible until now." There are so many blocks to that radical change, and sometimes that radical change is exactly what you need. And really, I mean, you know, starting a business is a radical change, especially if it involves leaving a previous job. That it's usually leaving a previous version of yourself, right? There's so much growth. There's so much upheaval of mindset and patterns and lies that you've told yourself for so long that a business just hacks off of you, right? So I'm so inspired.
I love that you equate it to being a new version.
Say that one more time.
I was joking with people that I love that you are equating that change to being like a new version of yourself. Mm-hmm. Because my joke as I was prepping to leave Canada was, okay, I'm launching Devon 4.0. Like I'm taking the best of 1, 2, and 3, and this is 4.0. And it's like game on. Okay. Showing up a lot differently in the world now. Mm-hmm. And so far, so good.
I love that. I love that picture and that perspective. And to know that there'll be a Devon 5.0 and a Devon 6.0.
Oh, yeah.
And that's never promised, but the hope for it and the vision for it is so powerful. That's super cool. So I think as we're talking about that, listeners, if you can think about the decade that you're in and maybe what version of you are, and thinking about it that way, what's the next version going to be like? I love that. I love that picture. And I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we tend to think of that. And then, you know, think of your next version and then think about the version you're at right now too, the present version, and how you can continue to hone her and love her too, right? Like that's a huge piece. But anyway, I'm going to go completely off the rails here. And because I'm completely fascinated by the French culture around food. Yes, this has nothing to do with business, you guys. I'm just really, I'm really fascinated by it. No, so fascinated by French culture and food. How has that been? Because, okay, let me give a little background, you guys. At one point this winter, I think, or maybe I don't know when it was, I got a latte at my favorite coffee shop, and it's literally, the lattes there are literally the size of your head. And I had just talked to Devon, or we were in Instagram DMs or something, and I snapped a picture and I'm like, check out the size of this latte, knowing that in Europe and especially in France, serving sizes are not what they are in North America. I'm like, it's literally the size of my head. And that just difference is so stark and so crazy to me. And I would love to know, how has it been to experience the French culture around food?
It has been lovely. And I think the coffee thing especially is that, you know, back home, I mean, in Canada, we have Tim Hortons, which is the Dunkin' Donuts equivalent.
Right.
And so the coffee routine is like, you're in your car, you wait at the drive-thru on your way to wherever you're going, and you get your like 14 gallons of coffee. It's not quality coffee, it's just like volume. And then you drink it on the go. And here, you actually go and sit down. And an actual human being like brings you a little tiny cup of coffee, and you take even the 5 minutes to drink it in your seat. And I adore that. And for me, like around coffee in particular, that becomes my like afternoon break. Is, you know, when I'm working from home, there's my favorite cafe near me is about a 5-minute walk, and I'll be like, no, okay, 3 o'clock, go down for my coffee. They know me. They know I like an allongé, which is just like a long espresso. And I don't even have to order it anymore. It just arrives. And it's bonjour, madame. On a allongé? Okay, there we go.
Oh my
and I get about
goodness.
half an hour, 5 minutes without a computer, just with my journal. And it motivates me for the rest of the day. So I love the coffee culture. The other culture that I love is around, I will admit, wine.
Oh yeah.
Having wine with lunch is no big deal. They just do it. And I love that. Sounds good to me. I'm on board.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just listening to a podcast just yesterday about, it was just about food in general. I think it was on Hidden Brain, which I love that podcast. And the food expert that was speaking was saying that Americans, or even just North Americans, tend to experience food based on what it'll do to their metabolism, or their body as a whole. And the French experience food with their mouths. And he went into great detail about it. And it was it was so intriguing, because I've always been an American. I've never been out of the country. I know, shocker, I'm a loser. But but the whole idea
Don't come visit me.
Yeah, I know, right? The entire idea to experience it, just food with your mouth. It's like, well, yeah, you can actually do that. And not with your feelings or your brain or your heart or whatever. And it's just, and you just get to sit and enjoy it. I wonder how that is allowing you to maybe cope with your always staying busy, just that little break in between there, where the world is just kind of slower. That feels really good to me.
Definitely helps. It also helps that fridges are, well, for the most part, fridges are quite small. So you do grocery shopping more often. And it's even just thinking like, okay, well, what do I want for dinner tonight? And then you go buy the ingredients for tonight. And it's like, every couple of days you have this special little like planning happening, because you can't go to a Costco here. My fridge is only like 2 feet by 2 feet. There's no way that would work. So I think it keeps more attached to the food in a healthy way.
Yeah. It's just incredible. Again, this has nothing to do with business, but maybe it has everything to do with business, because food is so much of how you show up in the day. It just blows my mind all the time. All right. Okay. We're going to let that little, rabbit hole go. We're going to back our way out of that.
Now that we're all hungry.
Now that we're starving and we want a really nice little cup of coffee and a beautiful glass of wine. Not like we didn't before, but now we really do. I would love to know, what are you working on right now in your business? Where's your focus at?
I am, besides from meeting as many people as possible, which is an ongoing process. I think what I am playing with right now, I was kind of roughly journaling about it a bit this morning, is reviving an old idea, which is finally writing my book. And I had planned to do it last year and got lovely sidetracked by applying for a visa for France, which was about as much writing as an entire book. But, I don't necessarily have something pretty to show for it other than living here. So bringing that idea back. And I'm excited that in the last, 12 months, I think my business has matured a lot. I've matured a lot. My perspectives are different. And I have a lot more value to put into that piece of work now. So that's what I'm excited to start playing with.
That is exciting. Have you always wanted to write a book, or is this a new call?
I think a few years ago when I first started my business, I thought I should write a book. Like, okay, well, it's one of the things to put on the checklist of things you do when you have a business is check you write a book. So it was more of something just to hit the checkbox. And now I really want to write a book because there's some ideas around negotiation that I'm really excited about. And I mean, I could talk about it for like 3 hours. I'm so excited about the idea of how negotiation is changing and how, in the new corporate cultures, we can't get away with the same old negotiation. I get so excited about that. And I feel like, okay, this is an idea that I can transform into a really powerful book that will help a lot of different people. It's not just a check in the box.
Perfect. Tell me when it goes on pre-sale. I'm buying that thing. Because I need to read it. Perfect. Now, what inspires you in your work?
Other than my clients, I am not a mother, but I am a proud negotiation mama when I work with someone and then they send me that text message to be like, oh my God, I just made an ass. And I get so proud and that gives me life. So other than my great clients, it's probably art. And I get really inspired by art. I can't draw my way out of a paper bag. It would seriously look like cave drawings if I put pen to paper. But I love the idea, and it's a founder here of a tech company that shared this when I met her about a month and a half ago, is that artists and entrepreneurs are a lot alike because we take the spark of an idea and we make something from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, oh yeah, that's it. That feels good. So I find when I go to a gallery, when I'm seeing, a new piece of fashion, that inspires me in business.
I love that answer. You're so right. If the topic of asking for what you want and need and the larger topic of negotiation, if that is interesting to someone and they're feeling like, yeah, I need some work. Like I need some work on that. What resources would you suggest, whether they're your own, things that we can find on your website or other books or podcasts or anything that we can cue into to get more goodness around asking?
First of all, it's going to be my up-and-coming book later in 2018.
Yes, please.
So stay tuned for that. Follow me on Instagram to get the scoop. And then on my blog, because I've been blogging for 4 years now, I have a wealth of resources on there on everything from mindset to pricing to how to properly phrase the ask to make sure you're putting your best foot forward. So over on my blog, tons of content there. And then a resource that I really like to recommend as pre-work when you're starting to think about negotiating more is around money mindset. So I think, the all-star on this is, for me, Denise Duffield-Thomas. I think she does great work about breaking down what people's money roadblocks are. So if you can explore her work, read her books, I think there's a lot there when it comes to opening up your potential for asking for things financially, specifically.
Yes. Amen to that. I think I've had this conversation a couple times this week about how money mindset, I mean, if that's out of whack, like it's like everything is out of whack. It's just crazy. So yes, I would definitely support that recommendation as well. All right. One last question we have to end with. Looking back, I would love to know, what advice would you give to yourself when you were first starting your business? That girl on her couch, hunched over her MacBook, trying to figure all of this out. What would you say to her?
I would tell her, I think, what's the thing? We're supposed to speak to ourselves gently and with love as we would speak to our best friend. But I'd probably yell at her. And I would say, get your butt off the couch and go out there and meet some people. Because I really did not do that. And I think it slowed down my progress. And it made me feel more isolated. And if I had gotten off my butt and started attending events right from day one, I think I would have been a lot happier as a very new entrepreneur.
That's so interesting.
So a little tough love.
Yeah, thank you for that tough love. All right, so before we go, could you please tell the listeners where they can find you online?
You can find me online at devonsmiley.com. And for all the goodness that's happening with Brit and I over on Instagram, I am at Devon Smiley.
Perfect. All right, you heard her, girls. Go check her out, send her some love, and then hop into our private Facebook group to hear even more from Devon over the next few days. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. Keep the conversation going by visiting marketinginyogapants.com/Facebook, where you'll get to join that private Facebook group I've been talking so much about. There, you'll get to chat with our podcast guests. Yeah, they're in there too. And all of the other brilliant creative business owners. We're connecting, we're meeting our soul sisters, and we're building our businesses, all while in yoga pants. So come hang out with us. Again, visit marketinginyogapants.com/Facebook to get in. And one more thing. If you dig this podcast, would you be awesome and share it with someone? This entire Marketing in Yoga Pants movement is nothing without its community. So please share, and if you're really feeling the love right now, jump into iTunes. You're probably already there if you're listening to this right now, and leave us a rating and review. The more of those we rack up, the more the podcast will be found by ladies like you, and the stronger this community becomes. This episode was edited and produced by the Podcast Engineers. They're pretty great, so go find them at podcastengineers.com. This episode was also brought to you by my online marketing agency, Jam Marketing Group, and you can find us at jammarketinggroup.co. That's all for now. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you back here next week on the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. Love ya. Bye.